Okay, so you can check the new one. It is public, so you can continue. Are you able to view it, please? All right, thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's class. Today we'll be looking at future scenarios and stories, and given the amount of time that we have lost, it appears that I have to rush through the program as it is. So, as a form of introduction, we'll be looking at what future is, what scenario is, and what stories are. Now, why are we considering this is Oluwatosin Dolapo Ajala. Okay, good afternoon. Yeah, we have seen from the beginning of the class that we consider software as a product, and as such, there are methods to which we can adopt in getting a product available to a customer, right? So, we saw in the second class the agile process as a form of incremental delivery of software products to the customers. Now, we looked at different practices in the agile method up until we look at characteristics of Scrum, extreme programming, and a host of other things. Now, this is just still describing software as a product. Now, before you develop a software, there are things that needs to be put in place or considered before you can say, okay, let me start the process of implementing what I've gathered on the field or the requirement of the customer. So this is what we'll be looking at generally, how to gather requirements for a software, and also how to go about getting some of these requirements in a standard practice, right? So as a form of introduction, software products, there are three factors that derive the design of software products. The first thing is that business and customer needs that are not met by the current product. So oftentimes when we tell students to come up with a research topic, they always go back to probably archaic methods of doing things, forgetting the fact that there are existing systems that have solved the problem that they are pointing out at. For instance, if you want to probably pay for your transportation in Lagos, as it were, there's a likelihood that you have to interact with technology in one way or the other, especially for the government-owned and some private taxis, like the Uber, the Taxify, the Lagbus, and a host of others. So there's a need for you to understand that there are systems that existed before now. And it's upon those existing systems that you look for requirements that you feel is important or is going to be useful to what you want to improve upon. So you don't probably present it to us as if you are the person starting the whole research agenda. No, There are existing systems upon which you are supposed to build on. So businesses have been operating on products. Customers, of course, have also been using the products, but the current product does not address their needs. So that is one of the sources of getting out requirements for software development. Also, a customer that is dissatisfied with existing business or consumer software products can also give us a form of requirement. For instance, I was in the lag box some times back, and they have a policy that you tap in, you tap out or something. Then they have designated bus stops. However, there are some contingency plans that they did not put into consideration, or probably they did not educate their drivers to implement. For instance, you are in traffic and probably you could get a bike that could probably navigate you through the traffic to get to where you are going. And the driver insists that he must get to the next bus stop. Now, that will come up with customer dissatisfaction. You can keep me endlessly in the bus. Doing what? When I can get off, cross to the other side, get a bike, and move to where I'm going. But you want to delay me perpetually. So I think I was in that situation once, and I had to call the head office that, what kind of people are you people dealing with, or what kind of individuals have you employed? There's a traffic. Now, if I'm supposed to go somewhere urgent, will this person hold me to ransom for so long a period that we're going to be in the traffic? He should know that that is a contingency, that is an emergency, and he should treat it as such. So if a customer is dissatisfied with a form of service or a product, it can serve as a requirement gathering for development of a new product. Also, changes in technology that makes completely new types of product possible. Now, of course, if you look at the multi-window opening capability of the computer system, probably started in 2003. Prior to that time, you cannot open two applications. So you cannot do multi-processing. You can only do single processing. But with the advent of, with the improvement in operating system, with the improvements in hardware development, with the improvement in processing power, we're able to open several different applications. So different method of processing things comes up, different methods of approaching problems comes up. So any system that is only designed to undo a single mode of processing, we have to phase out. So new software we have to come that could also work in a form of multi-window or multi-processing platform. For instance, before the advent of GSM, we had to go and line up at Nitel to make calls, right? You buy some things that look like this ATM cards, you slot it, you dial the number, right? You call the fellow. But as soon as mobile telecommunication came, I don't remember seeing those things again. All those Nitel buildings have even gone moribund. So a technology came that phased Nitel out. Now, it's a time we also come where the 1G, 2G, 3G, and some other things will be phased out, where we have faster and reliable connectivities. So new software will have to be developed on those platforms. So when new technologies come up, we have to also develop new softwares that could work on that platform. Now, in the early stages of product development, you are trying to understand what product feature will be useful to the users and what they like and dislike about the products that they already use or that they are using. So as a software developer or as a requirement engineer, you have to look at what product feature will be useful to the user. And you should not also assume for the user. You should ask the user what the user likes and what the user dislikes based on existing systems that he has been working on, right? So we want to look at software features. So you remember we are looking at features, scenarios, and stories. So what are features now? A feature is a fragment of functionality. A fragment of functionality, such as a print feature, a change background feature, a new document feature, and so on. Now, before you start programming a product, you should aim to create a list of features to be included in your product. So you cannot just jump out and start implementing or displaying your skills of programming, or you want to see how stylistic you could be with programming. If you develop a program that doesn't have a bearing on the life and also the ease of use, it is important to tell you that your system or your product will not sell in the marketplace. You know, we are living procedural. In fact, we have left procedural kind of programming. We are probably still managing objects, but service-oriented programming is the in thing. That's why you have children of maybe age 6 upwards that they can also program and develop softwares that they can use. They can develop games, calculator, and a host of that, because they don't have to learn all these declaring string, declaring variables. All those things are already represented in object form. So they just drag and drop, and they will compile and run the program. They get a software that they are using or that they can use. So the features that you are going to, that will be included in a particular product must be listed out. You can't just start and say, okay, let me just implement anything. No. So the list of features must be included in your product. The feature list should be your starting point for product design. This you should put in mind. Okay, if you are developing, probably you are deviating from, let's say, the development of the software is based on new technology, right? So you have to list features that you want to include on that platform. However, if you are improving an existing software, there may be a situation where you have to repeat what has existed on that system, but you must also improve on certain aspects that the user dislikes, right? All right, so on that user understanding. Now, it makes sense in any product development to spend time trying to understand the potential user or users and customers of your product. This is very fundamental. Your user may be a group of people, maybe age range. It may be a profession. It may be other areas of specific application. So you must understand those who are supposed to use your product. And you must look at their general outlook, their background, what they already know, what they already used to. Now you find out that, well, for those of us who grew up 80s and thereabout, we found out that our parents could not cope up with the changes in technologies that happened so fast from the 90s upwards. You know, they are already used to that black and white television that has 4 legs, and they just open it like a wardrobe and close it. So when systems, TV and technologies came, satellites, where you have to use remote control, you watch color TVs and all that, they get confused on how to operate it because they're already used to the manual one. Just turn it, pa, 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 and it moves on. So now that you have to be pressing numbers, once it exceeds 9, how to change it to 10, they get confused. So most of them got laid back, right, from using some of these technologies. Then all of a sudden, mobile telephone came, the likes of Facebook, WhatsApp came. So if you look at the population of those who are above 60 who are on Facebook, you find out that they are just joining Facebook in recent time, when probably their children, their grandchildren had time to teach them on how to use it. And their use is even limited. Why? Because that is the level of understanding and how comfortable they are with the technology that is to be deployed. Now, a range of techniques have been developed for understanding the ways that people work and use software. These include user interview, surveys, ethnography, and task analysis. Now, user interview is like you go to the person's maybe domain or space or place of work, you put some question through to him, asking him specifics, asking him to narrate what he feels, right? Then surveys, you could send out questionnaires that the person should respond to those questionnaires and the others. Then ethnography is relocating to study a group of people where they are in their, as in, they may not even know you are there, but you are studying them and making observation, their culture, their perspective, the way they see things. You take note of all that. Then also task analysis. Okay, probably in a specific professional setting, you could be looking at the way they carry out their tasks and asking a few questions. Why is this done this way? Why is that done that way? So some of these techniques are expensive and unrealistic for small companies, right? So some companies may not be able to afford the costs of survey, ethnography, task analysis. So informal user analysis and discussion, which simply involves asking users about their work, the software they use, its strengths and weaknesses, are inexpensive way and very valuable. So if you want to develop software for a small company or for an individual, an inexpensive way to do is to just do an informal user analysis and discussion. Right. So a way of represent or from personnel to features. So we're going to be looking at what is a personnel, or what is a personas, or what are personas, then what are scenarios, what are features. So this is the link between personnel, scenario, and features. So the personnel expresses in natural language description of a user's interaction with a software product. So it describes to you how you have been interacting with the product over time. So this forms a scenario for us. Then from the scenario, they are developed into stories. That's natural description of something that is needed or wanted by the user. So the stories is now redefined or defined to specific fragments of product functionality, which is a feature or which are features, right? So this is the link from personnel to scenario to stories and to features. So scenarios can inspire features, and also stories can be defined into features. So input, activation, and output, that the feature description. So you describe the input from the user and other sources. What are the actions? A description of how the input data is processed by the user. Can you see hear me, please? Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, you can just type if you can hear me. If you can't hear, let's know. Oh, thank you. Arnieze. Hello. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. David Debo. Then Ghost Time. Obafemi. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So the inputs from the user, it goes into action, a description of how the input data is processed, then the outputs. The output to the user and the system, how the feature is activated by the user. So all these interactions are looked at dispassionately. Then the feature name is come up with. That what is this individual describing? Then a feature name can be given. We're going to be looking at a proper explanation of all these statements shortly. So to create a new group, the new name of the group chosen by the user, a new container is created with the specified name. Now, using the new group menu option or keyboard shortcut, then what are the outputs? An empty document container and an updated list of documents that includes the newly created group. Now, this is for existing system where a user is criticizing a particular feature, a new technology, or a new addendum. Generally, this is where the new feature group is defined. So we saw in this slide where we have personas. So what is persona? What are persona? Now you need to have an understanding of your potential user to design features that they are likely to find useful and to design a user interface that is suited to them. Now, be very conscious of this. Once you are doing or when you are developing a software system, it is important for you to know the individual who is going to use that system. That is very important. Do not assume for the individual. Let the person tell you what he needs. And based on the requirements you have gathered from that person, you could now design a user interface or a software that suits the personality of the individual. For instance, we are aware or probably technically not sure that most women, they like pinkish stuffs, right? So if you want to design a user interface that will attract them, I think it's better you use female colors, pink, all those them colors. But for men, just choose black and white. We're okay. So once the software that is required of it, that's what we're interested in. But for ladies, they are interested in other stylistics, right? Even mobile phone, when they get mobile phone, they'll probably want something that is not black, like blue, pink, and if it's black, they'll go and buy a pouch that is pink. But for guys, it's either black or white. So what are personas? Personas are imagined users where you create a character portrait of a type of user that you think might use your product. For example, if your product is aimed at managing appointments for dentists, you might create a dentist persona, a receptionist persona, and a patient persona. So these are the things that should be considered in developing that software as well. So personas of different types of user help you imagine what these users may want to do with your software and how it may be used. They help you emphasize difficulties that they might have in understanding and using your product. It should be of note that any product that is cumbersome and is hard to use, loses its value once there's an alternative. How do you feel that Nitel disappeared so suddenly? I think they said there was a minister who opined that mobile telephoning is the exclusive of the rich. But we thank God now that even a shoemaker is using mobile phones. Now, it's a lot of stress having to plan yourself to dress up, to bath. Then you now run to Nitel, you go and line up. Then what betide you, you get to the front and they say it has been disconnected. That means the whole day that you have planned just to communicate with somebody has been wasted. But now I can just pick up my phone. The highest is that the person is not available. But I've saved my time of having to bath, dress up, waste fuel, then go and line up in the cold or sun. Then you get to the front. In fact, sometimes people fight on the queue. So that has been eliminated with the use of technology. Okay, I think there's a question. Hello, sir. What happens when you developing a software for a client based on your assessment of the end user's behavior and make a recommendation to your client, but the client, but the client wants it in a different way, which you think may not be the best option? What do you do in that case? Well, that's a very good question. Now, oftentimes, of course, just like the normal or the regular slogan, customers are always right, right? Do what the customer wants. You are going to be the one working on the internal mechanism. All the person needs to work with is the interface. Do what the person wants on the interface, but the internal working can be modified by you, right? Just to reflect on the writing. However, there is a practice. I'm going to come to that very shortly. Okay, let me just quickly run through this. Now, personals of different types or user helps you imagine, okay, they help you emphasize difficulties that they might have in understanding and using the product. Now, you see this last line, emphasize difficulties that they might have in understanding. So as a requirement engineer, you have to emphasize this. And there's a skill of persuasion, making somebody, okay, you can tell somebody go to hell and the person will be grateful to even run there the next minute. So as a requirement engineer, do not carry your shoulder up and tell us that, look, I'm a scientist, you must listen to what I say. No, that person knows what he wants to do, what he wants to achieve. He's the one that wants to use the software and is going to live with it. If he has to call you to come and help you repair a particular bug, it may take him several or cost him a lot in terms of labor hour, not in terms of money now. So he doesn't want that. So do what he wants. So as a requirement engineer, you should emphasize that these people will query you, they will argue with you, especially what they are not conversant with. It is now left for you to explain to them in terms that they will understand. However, okay, let's go on. You'll see why. Now, this an example of a personnel for a primary school teacher. Say Jack, a primary school teacher, age 32, is a primary school elementary teacher in Ulapo, a large coastal village in Scottish Island. He teaches children from ages 9 to 12. He was born in a fishing community north of Ulapo, where his father runs a marine fuel supply business and his mother is a community nurse. He has a degree in English from Glasgow University and retrained as a teacher after several years working as a web content author for a large leisure group. Jack's experience as a web developer means that he is confident in all aspects of digital technology. He passionately believes that the effective use of digital technology blended with face-to-face teaching can enhance the learning experience for children. He's particularly interested in using iLearn system for a project-based teaching where students work together across subjects or subject area on challenging topics. Now, personal description. A personnel should paint a picture of a product, of a type of product user. This is how you describe, and the person who asked that question, I'm still going to get to respond clearly to your question. A personnel should paint a picture of a type of product user. They should be relatively short and easy to read. You should describe their background and why they might want to use your product. Now, the background of the user of your product is quite important. Why? The individual you are trying to develop a product for may be knowledgeable to a large extent or may not even have a technical expertise in that area. Okay, let's digress a bit. I'm sure if you want to go to the hospital to see a doctor, right? You know the symptoms that you have. There is at least a chance that 70% you would have Googled those symptoms. Then when you get to the doctor, you present your case, you'll be arguing with the doctor, no, that's not it. And the doctor will be looking at you like that. He is the expert in that area, but it's as if they have trained them to just to accommodate some of our excesses in arguing with them. They will just, okay, that's true. Then they will tell you what they want to do. And that is the regimen of treatment that they will prescribe to you. So if they're applying that regimen of treatment and you say, no, you don't want, then they give you a DAMA that you feel and they will discharge you. So that if anything happens, they will not have any case to answer. So as a software developer, you should understand that the individual coming to give you a work would also want to prove that he knows a bit. Even if he's completely ignorant, he will still want to prove that, oh, I know something. Let me argue with this guy. Now, when people's ignorance have been proven to their face, then they become defensive. That is what happens in the case of that question. When the individual insists that that is what you want to do, he probably would have seen it with a friend, or he feels that this is how it works. But you as a professional, you must learn how to listen and how to explain concepts to a potential customer. Now, you should describe their background and why they might want to use your product. You should also say something about their educational background and technical skills. This helps you assess whether or not a software feature is likely to be useful, understandable, and usable by typical product user, by any product user. So it may be useful, but will the user understand it? If you find it useful and he understands it, can you present it in a way that will be usable, that will be easy to use for the product user? These are things you need to consider. So for personnel, there must be personalization, which includes personal information about the individual. You must include job related, include details of the job, of the individual's job, include details of the education and experience, that's the education of the individual, include details of their interests in the product. So what is the relevance of your product to this individual or to this user or the personnel who is going to be adopting your product. So aspect of personnel description. The first one is personalization. You should give them a name and say something about their personal circumstances. This is important because you shouldn't think that a personnel as a role. Should not think of a personnel as a role, but as an individual. It is sometimes helpful to use an appropriate stock photograph to represent the person in the personnel. Some studies suggest that this helps project team use personnel more effectively, job related. If your product is targeted at businesses, you should say something about their job, and if necessary, what that job involves. For some jobs, such as teachers or teacher, where readers are likely to be familiar with the job, this may not be necessary. Education. You should describe their educational background and their level of technical skills and experience. This is important, especially for interface design relevance. If you can, you should say why they might be interested in using the product and what they might want to do with it. Why is personnel useful? The main benefit of personnel is that they help you and other development team empathize with the potential user of the software. So you want to put yourself in the position of the user and see that, okay, if I encounter this problem, can I use the software in this way? If there's a sudden hanging or freezing of my screen, how can the user not lose a lot of details or information or data he has sent in when that issue is being resolved? So you empathize. Personnel helps you to empathize with the potential user. Personnel also helps because they are a tool that allows developers in all cases. You want to look at, okay, if I'm using the software, does it load fast? Does it consume data, especially when it has to be web-based or you have to connect to the internet? What is the cost of the internet service person is using? So you step in the shoes of the person while empathizing with the individual. Instead of thinking about what you would do in a particular situation, you can imagine how a personnel would behave and react. So to the question that was typed, now instead of you thinking about what you would do in a particular situation as an expert, you can imagine how a personnel, that means a user of your product, will behave or react. For instance, a phone repairer, if his phone drops on the ground, there's a possibility that he will not be shouting, hey, the devil is after him. He just picks it up, goes into his workshop, cuts the screen open, bring another one, put it there, and it goes on. Though it will cost him anyways. But for an individual whose phone is his business, is his office, and it drops, you therefore think of the cost of running to Computer Village, the cost that the repairer will charge him, and a host of stress that we have to go through, traffic and other things. So you, as a phone repairer, put yourself in the shoes of the person who owns the phone that dropped. What trauma has the person gone through? So also as a developer, put the person and check how would this person behave and react if it's found in a particular situation. Now, personnel can help you check your ideas to make sure that you are not including product features that aren't really needed. Oftentimes, as a programmer, you may want to impress the user to tell him that, look, your features, the features you want to include in the products is probably like you are extending it and telling that, look, this one will be useful for the future. It may not be useful. It may be dragging the business down. It may be slow and a host of other things. So you are not to include products that are not really needed. Just answer the requirement of the user and get over with. Now, they help you avoid making unwarranted assumptions based on your own knowledge. Yeah, so once this person insists that this is what I want done, you should not write the person off. He may give sufficient points in his stories that may convince you that, oh, these features may be included. But as a programmer, you already have an overview that, oh, this is what you want to do. This is how to solve it. But first, listen to the person's basis for contracting you to design the system. And designing an overcomplicated or irrelevant product. So if you don't listen to the personnel, you may design a good product, but it becomes overcomplicated and irrelevant as it stands. So driving personnel, deriving personnel, sample space. Personnel should be based on the understanding of the potential product user, their job, their background, and their aspiration. You should study and survey potential users to understand what they want and how they might use the product. From the data, you can then abstract the essential information about the different types of product user and use this as a basis for creating personnel. Personnel that are developed on the basis of limited user information are called proto-personnel. That means if you want to develop a product that will be sent out generally for a lot of people with different backgrounds, aspirations, needs, just like the WhatsApp, this social media app, right, is a form of proto-personnel because you did not, the developer did not interview me as a person to make it custom built for me, but he just emphasized, oh, people want to make cheap calls over the internet. So let's create a place where they can make calls using internet. Let's make a place where they can do video calls to catch up with loved ones. Okay, let's create a space where they can type their messages and send. Then they will now also know when the person has seen their message. You know, you may send messages and the person may not even see it, and you assume that the person has seen it and it's not responding to you or it's not calling you. But you see when it turns blue, say this person has read it, thank God. There may also be an option where the user disables the blue line that, look, I don't want this person to know if I've read it or not. Well, that's a criminal act. As well, you may not want to be disturbed and somebody monitoring you, so you can disable some of these things. Then there's a place where last seen, okay, is this person, when was this person online? Oh, the person was just online. So it's a form of monitoring. Requirement now increased or was modified by the user. Say, look, can't you give us options for us to be able to disable some of these things? It's causing a lot of problems. Then you see a place where to pop up, are you online or you're offline? People can also disable all this. So it is a general kind of app that now went through refinement over time. Of course, it has not got to the permanent site anyways. So proto-personnel may be created as a collective team exercise using whatever information is available about the potential product user. Am I recording at all? Is the stop recording? Okay, it's recording. Okay, so the proto-personnel may be created as a collective. They can never be as accurate as personnel developed from detailed user studies, but they are better than nothing. So we are going to the next one, which is the scenario. A scenario is a narrative that describes how a user or a group of users might use your system. Now, please let me quickly point out here that a scenario talks about the whole system, the narration of how you use the whole system. That means a combination of all the features, how you use them. It is now like an evaluation of the whole system that are on the whole software, right? Okay, let's continue. There's no need to include everything in a scenario. The scenario isn't a system specification. It is simply a description of a situation where a user is using your product features to do something that they want to do. Scenario description may vary in length from 2 to 3 paragraphs up to a page of text. So this is another scenario. Now, they say Jack is a primary school teacher. He teaches primary 3. So he has decided that the class project should be focused around fishing industry in his area, looking at the history, development, and economic impact of fishing. As part of this study, or as part of this, students are asked to gather and share reminiscences from relatives, use newspaper archives, and collect old photographs related to fishing and fishing communities in the area. Pupils use an island wiki to gather together fishing stories, and Sacran, it's a history archive site to access newspaper archives and photographs. However, Jack also needs a photo sharing site, as he wants students to make and comment on each other's photo, to upload scans of old photographs that they may have in their family. He needs to be able to moderate posts with photos, with, he needs to be able to moderate posts with photos before they are shared, because preteen children can't understand copyright and privacy issues. Jack sends an email to a primary school teacher group to see if anyone can recommend an appropriate system. 2 teachers replied, and both suggested he uses Kid Take Pics, a photo sharing site that allows teachers to check and moderate content. As Kid Take Picture is not integrated with the Island authentication service, he sets up a teacher and a class account with Kids Take Picture. He uses the Island's setup service to add Kid Take Picture to the service seen by the students in his class, so that when they log in, they can immediately use the system to upload photos from their phones and class computers. Excuse me. All right. So the scenario description, we have a scenario name, overall objective, what's involved in reaching the objective, personnels of actors involved in the scenarios, problems that can't be addressed by existing systems, possible ways that the problems could be tackled. So when you look at this, sorry, I think you can't see that. When you look at this, is you are evaluating existing systems. That's what you are doing in this aspect. So once the whole system is being criticized or being, what do you call it? Let me use a better word. It's being evaluated or being criticized, then a scenario is being created. Okay, so going forward. So what are the elements in scenario? Yeah, a brief statement of the overall objective. Now, like the case study where we have here, right? This one I want to look at the scenario elements. A brief statement of the overall objective is needed. In Jack's scenario, this is to support a class project on the fishing industry. So that is like the overall objective or the aim of the research work. Now, reference to the previous, to personnels involved, Jack, so that you can get information about the capabilities and of that user. Then information about what is involved in doing the activities. That's the methodology. For example, in Jack's scenario, this involves gathering reminiscence from relatives, accessing newspapers. So this is the methodology with different methods. It involves gathering reminiscences from relatives, accessing newspaper archives, then old pictures taken or whatever they have on their computers or phones would be useful. Now, explanation of problems that can be readily addressed using existing systems. So this is reviewing existing literatures. Young children don't understand issues such as copyright and privacy. So photo sharing requires a site that a teacher can moderate to make sure that published images are legal and acceptable. So you review relevant literatures to guide your thoughts. Now, a description of one way that the identified problem might be addressed. In Jack's scenario, the preferred approach is to use an external tool design for school students. So this is the result you want to present to us. So narrative scenarios. Narrative, high-level scenario, like Jack's scenario, are a means of facilitating communication and stimulating design creativity. They are effective in communication because they are understandable and accessible to users and to people responsible for funding and buying the system. As with personnel, they help developers to agree on a shared understanding of the system that they are creating. Scenarios are not specifications. They lack detail. They may be incomplete, and they may not represent all types of users or user interactions. How do you now write a scenario? Scenario should always be written from the user's perspective and based on identified personnel or real users. Your starting point for scenario writing should be the personnel, that's the user, that you have created. You should normally try to imagine several scenarios from each personnel. Ideally, scenarios should be general and should not include implementation information. However, describing an implementation is often the easiest way to explain how a task is done. It is important to ensure that you have a coverage of all the potential user roles when describing a system. For instance, the dentist, the patient, and the receptionist in the example we have in the aforementioned. You see that it is important that all these sides from the personnel, each of the personnel and their role, remember, personnel are not the role, it's not considered as a role. So you look at every individual who has interacted with different modules on the software, you get their view. These now form a scenario for the whole system. User involvement. It is easy for everyone to read and understand scenario. So it is possible to get users involved in their development. The best approach to develop an imaginary scenario based on our understanding of how the system might be used. Then ask users to explain what you have got wrong. Still on the question posted. So the best approach is, the best approach is to develop an imaginary scenario based on our understanding of how the system might be used. Then ask users to explain what you have got wrong. So if you have explained your position to the user, then the user will listen attentively, then chip in one or two things that, oh, this is what I want. Especially when you approach architects and you tell them to design like a building for you, right? They will describe, okay, they will ask you, okay, how many rooms do you want? Do you want the sitting room to be big? What is the airflow, the direction? What's the land size that you have and all that? So based on what the architect says, right, the user or the personnel can now tell the architect that, okay, I have 2 plots of land, but I just want to use half plots. So you have to design a building that is small, like a chalet, in such a way that I could build bigger buildings later or build commercial buildings later. So based on what the architect has described, okay, this is what I want to include. I want to include all the rooms to be ensuite, this to be this, to be that. Then the personnel, the owner of the building, can now chip in and look, I don't want all the rooms to have their own toilets. I just want a central toilet and all that thing. So the personnel now corrects some of the misgiving that you have as the architect or the programmer. They might ask about things that they did not understand and suggest how the scenario could be extended and made more realistic. Now, that is from the user's point of view. So as a requirement engineer or as a software developer, you should not, as a matter of policy, load your view on the personnel. Our experience was that users are not good at writing scenarios. That's true. So that when you're having discussion with them, there will be refinements. So like when you now get the first release, they will look at the whole system, they will criticize it, tell you, this is what we want to. So you can now start improving on the features of the whole system. The scenarios that they created were based on how they worked at the moment. So you as a developer, you may have the idea, oh, new technology has come up and it could be introduced into their work space, which will make things easier, but they are not used to it. So you explain to them, they will ask questions, oh, how will this make my work easy? How will this make my life much more easier? So there were far too details and the users couldn't easily generalize their experience. So they want to write plenty things, but as a professional, they may not write in a way that you could interpret sufficiently. So user stories. User stories are high level. So now the next one is stories, right? We have left scenario. Now we are in stories. So stories are high levels. Okay, scenarios are high level stories of system use. Now, please underline that system use. That means they are looking at the whole system for scenario. They should describe a sequence of interaction with the system, but should not include details of these interactions. User stories are finer grain narrative that gets out in a more detailed and structured way a single thing that a user wants from a software system specific. So if the user wants you to include in his application how to print, like you just put a box, click, if he does with a lot of, if he interacts with a lot of printing schedules, imagine as you go to file, go to this, then start looking for print, or use shortcuts, control something, but just put that image where he's able to see print and just click print when he has generated his maybe document, his trial balance, his report for the day. He just clicks print and the printer continues to battle with the remaining. Excuse me. As I'm not okay, user stories are more details and structured way, a single thing that a user wants from his software system. As an author, I need a way to organize the book that I'm writing into chapters and sections. This is what I want. How to organize my work or my thoughts into chapters and sections. So this is the specific. Sorry, that's not a undo. So this is what the user wants. Now, this story reflects what has become the standard format of a user story. And as a role, I want or need to do something. As a teacher, I want to tell all members of my group when new information is available. This is what I want. Like, okay, if there's a pop-up news, like a breaking news, I can quickly send to every member of staff, like all this WhatsApp group, faculty group, department group. You just send it there. Okay, this is the information we have. That is what is needed, specifics. So, and then as a teacher, I need to be able to report who is attending a class trip so that school maintains the required health and safety record. This is another specific thing. You want to be able to have attendance. The attendance is now escalated to school management to be able to plan for health and safety records. So these are the stuffs that user story is. Let me see, there's a question. Attention, class attendees. Please, let's write our name in this format when we are asked to do so. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lanite. Mr. Lanite is showing you the method that you should take or you should adopt in writing your name. So please adhere. But I'm not telling you to write your name now. So if you write your name, we'll give you 0. All right, sorry about that. Excuse me. Yeah, so an important, who is this one? Please don't write your name yet. Okay, thank you for the information, Mr. David Ebo. I'm not sure if I have that name correct. So user scenario or user stories in planning. An important use of user story in planning is in planning, sorry. Many users of the Scrum method represent the product backlog as a set of user stories. User stories should focus on a clearly defined system feature. Now you can see it is just one aspect of the feature that we are looking at, or aspect of the feature. Like if you want to print, that is a feature of a whole system. If you now want to print in duplex, that means front and back, so that the printer can be able to flip. That is a specific feature, or that is a specific aspect of the feature that can be implemented within a single sprint. Now, I'm sure you know what a sprint is. Now, if the story is about a more complex feature that may take several sprints to implement, then it is called an epic. So you can see this is a new term. You know what a sprint is. So if you have, okay, how many days is a sprint? I think you should go back to the last class and look at that. All right. So as a system manager, I need a way to back up the system. That's one, back up the system. The next one, and restore either individual application. So when you want to restore, the restoration is now broken into 3 or 4 places: individual applications, files, directories, or the whole system. So this is one aspect or one feature of this whole system, but the aspect of that system can also be broken down into several aspects. So if you cannot be able to finish implementing the requirement of that feature that is broken down into bits, then that is called an epic. There is a lot of functionality associated with the user story. For implementation, it should be broken down into simpler stories, with each story focusing on a single aspect of the backup system. So, story development. Now, you can develop user stories by refining scenarios. Three user stories can be identified from the following fragment of Emma's scenario. From home, she logs onto, I'm coming, let me choose my annotation stuff. Okay, say from home, she logs into the iLearning system, right? She does this using her Google account. That's her Google account credentials. Emma has 2 iLearn accounts. The accounts are teacher's accounts and parent accounts, right? Associated with the local primary school. Now, the system recognizes that she is a multiple account user owner or account owner and asks her to select the account to be used. She chooses the teacher's account and the system generates a personal welcome screen, as well as selected applications. This also shows management apps that help teachers create and manage students group. Let me clear all this stuff. Okay. So user stories from Emma's scenario. As a teacher, I want to be able to log into my iLearn account from home using my Google credentials so that I don't have to remember another login ID and password. So this is what this individual wants as a feature, to be able to log into our iLearn account using a Google credentials so that you don't have too many passwords. Then again, as a teacher, I want to access the app that I use for class management and administration. She also wants to be able to access some application that as soon as she logs in, those applications are populated for her. So she can she's a click away. That is another requirement she wants. Then as a teacher and parent, I want to be able to select the appropriate iLearn account so that I don't have to have separate credentials for each account, right? So she wants to merge her role as a teacher and as a parent together. So user scenario describing the group features. Now, as a teacher, I want to be able to send emails to all group members using a single email address. As a teacher, I want to be able to share uploaded information with other group members. As a teacher, I want the island system to automatically set up sharing mechanisms such as wiki, blogs, and websites. As a teacher, I want to be able to create a group of students and teachers so that I can share information with that group. As a teacher, I want the system to make it easy for me to select the students and teachers to be added to a group. So these are the stories that a particular person. So what's the personnel here? The personnel here is a teacher with the name Emma, and he wants all these specific addendums system to be developed or modified. So stories and scenarios. As you can express all the functionalities or functionality described in a scenario as user story, do you really need scenario? Scenarios are more natural and are helpful for the following reasons. Scenario reads more naturally. Okay, scenario reads more naturally because they describe what a user of a system, emphasis on the system, is actually doing with that system, not a feature now. Now, people often find it easier to relate to this specific information rather than the statement of wants or needs set out in a set of user story. At the same time, we should also point that the developer wants to do a lazy man's work because he doesn't want specifics. He just wants general. Then he picks on what he wants to solve and sends it back to the user. That is a lazy man's work. Now, if you are interviewing real users or are checking a scenario with real users, they don't talk in the stylized way that is used in user stories. People relate better to more natural narratives or narrative in scenarios. So people want to talk plenty things instead of specifics. So scenario often provides more context information or more context information about what the user is trying to do and their normal way of working. You can do this in user story, but it means that they are no longer simple statements about the use of system feature. System feature, that is the emphasis. So how do we identify the features to recommend for improvements on a whole system? Your aim in the initial stage of product design should be to create a list of features that defines your product. A feature is a way of allowing user to access and use product functionality. So the feature list defines the overall function of the system. Now, features should be independent, coherent, relevant. Independence. Features should not depend on how other system features are implemented and should not be affected by the order of activation of other features. Coherence. Features should be linked to a single item of functionality. They should not do more than one thing. and they should never have side effects. Relevance. Features should reflect the way that users normally carry out some tasks. They should not provide obscure functionality that is hardly ever required. So this is what feature design looks like. The user knowledge, product knowledge, technology knowledge, and the domain knowledge. Yeah, sorry. Let me see. What time is it now? Can't see the time. Okay, still time. So, knowledge required for feature design, user knowledge. You can use user scenario and user story. So you can see the link between stories, user, and feature to inform the team of what user wants and how they might use it in software features. Product knowledge. You may have experience of existing products or decide to research what these products do as part of your development. Low system resources may affect your audio quality. Oh, sorry. I think I'm being want to close some. Yeah, please give me 2 minutes or. Yeah, can you see my screen, please? Yes or no? Can you see my screen? I don't think there's any response. Oh, sorry, I think I've seen some response. All right, thank you for red. Mr. Laniton Okechukwu Ghost time, thank you. Albert Inze. Yeah, thank you all. Zaya Pinchin. It's funny. All right, so product knowledge. You may have experience of existing products or desire to do research what these products do as part of your development process. Sometimes your features have to replicate existing features in these products because they provide fundamental functionality that is always required. For instance, print. Maybe you have to print a document. It exists as it is. But what do you want to do to that functionality to make it easy to use as a feature for the personnel? Domain knowledge. This is the knowledge of the domain or work area, e.g. finance, event booking, that your product aims to support. By understanding the domain, you can think of a new innovative way of helping users do what they want to do. So if you have a good knowledge of that domain, you will provide good solution to them. For instance, I do some research in telemedicine and e-health, so I have to deal with medical individuals, but they don't see me as a professional in the medical field, and I'm not claiming to be one. I only want to automate processes in their workspace, right? So I need to read extensively to understand some things in that domain of thought, right? so that at least I will be able to contribute effectively and also take them from where they are to where we want to go. It is quite important as a developer. Then technology knowledge. New products often emerge to take advantage of technological development since their competitors were launched. If you understand the latest technology, you can design features on the existing system, of course, or product to make use of it. So as new technologies come up, you could develop new application or extend features that can be used on a product. Feature set design factors. These are their simplicity, functionality, familiarity, novelty, or automation, and control. So feature trade-offs, simplicity and functionality. You need to find a balance between providing a simple, easy to use system and including enough functionality to attract users with a variety of needs. Still going back to the question that was raised by one of our participants, he said, if a user insists that this is what you want, that he wants to do, and you as a programmer, you have told him, look, this one will be better. So you should find a way of providing a simple, easy to use system and including enough functionality to attract users with a variety of needs. So if the person insists that you do it this way, do it that way, but include a functionality, not a redundant one, but that will enhance the work of that individual in such a way that you won't have to be summoned back to deliver an increment. So familiarity and novelty. User prefer that new software should support the familiar everyday tasks that are part of their work or life. To encourage them to adopt your system, you need to find a balance between familiar features and new features that convince user that your products can do more than its competitors. Now, how many of you use, I think, is it Yahoo Messenger? Yeah, I'm sure a number of us would have used that. But what drove us away from Yahoo Yahoo Messenger, that we now have to come to WhatsApp? Now, I hope WhatsApp will be wise enough to continue giving us good functionalities, right? So that we'll be able to continue using their product for a long period. After all, this person is dead. What's the name of this? BBM, I think so. Is not working any longer because of new technology and new platforms. So make sure that what you are designing, people are familiar with it. It is part of their day-to-day life, and it can easily move from the level of technology you are, or the level of product you are presenting, to the next level without so much adjustment. Yeah. For instance, you will find people migrating from the normal TV to smart TVs now. But a lot of people still have problems using those technologies. It may be that where they are, the location, the internet service is not strong at that point. So to update some softwares on the TV becomes a problem. So they just prefer to stay with their old TV. But somebody who is in an area where there's 4G, 5G deployment of internet, that will not be an issue with such individual. So the locality of that individual plays a long way in him being familiar with novelty. Novelty is what you are bringing on board, and how can it improve my life? Automation and control. Some users like automation, where the software does things for them, robots. Other prefers to have control. So what they just do, they just change some functions here and there, and it goes. You may have to think carefully about what can be automated, how it is automated, and how users can configure the automation so that the system can be tailored to their preference. So feature creep. Feature creep occurs when new features are added in response to users' requests without considering whether or not these features are generally useful or whether they can be implemented in some other ways. So still to that question, what we have there is still, as in your question, is what is called a feature creep. When the individual wants you to do something in some way, and you in solving the problem may add some features that the user may not even want to use. Now, too many features make products hard to use and understand, and even in documentation. There are 3 reasons why feature creeps occur. 1, product managers are reluctant to say no when user asks for specific features. Developers try to match features in competing products. The product include features to support both inexperienced and experienced users. This can lead to a creep. Who is this Abdul Salam? Yeah, who told you to write your name? Mr. Olanite, give Absalam 0 for test 1. All right, moving on. So, feature questions. Does this feature really add anything new? Or is it simply an alternative way of doing something? So if it's just the alternative, why add it? Right? Is this feature likely to be important to and used by most software users? That means experts and non-experts. Does this feature provide general functionality, or it is a very specific feature? Can this feature be implemented by extending an existing features rather than adding another feature to the system? So these are methods to avoid feature creeps. These are the questions you ask. So if you're able to answer this question, then you provide quality response to avoid creeps. So how do we derive features? Features can be identified directly from the product vision or hello? Can you hear me, please? Okay. So I'm still waiting. Oh, thank you. All right, thank you, thank you. I can see your response. All right, so features can be identified directly from the product vision or from stories or scenarios, sorry. You can highlight phrases in narrative description to identify features to be included in your software. You should think about the features needed to support users' action, identified by active verbs, such as use, I want to use this, or I choose this. So, moving forward, let's look at the island system feature. Excuse me. For teachers and educators who needs a way to help students use web-based training resources and applications, the island system is an open learning environment that allows the set of resources used by classes and students to be easily configured for these students and classes by teachers themselves. Criticizing other existing systems, Unlike virtual learning environments, such as Moodle, the focus of iLearn is the learning process itself, rather than the administration and management of materials, assessment, and coursework. Our products enable teachers to create subjects and age-specific environments for their students using any web-based resources, such as video, simulations, and writing materials that are appropriate. So, features from product vision. A feature that allows users to access and use existing web-based resource. So those are the features from the iLearn vision. A feature that allows the system to exist in multiple different instantations. A feature that allows user configuration of the system to create a specific instantiation. So this is another scenario from Jack. Now, Jack is a primary school teacher in Unapoli, teaching primary P6 pupil, that's primary 6. He has decided that a class project should be focused around the fishing industry. Yeah. I think you just give me a few more minutes because we started late. So on the dot of 5:05, you can start writing your attendance. Some people are just joining. Imagine. Mr. Olanite, I think I can see you now. Let me give you Olanite. Is your network okay now? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is your network okay now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. So please, on the dot of 5:05, you can start taking your attendance. Please, sir, please, it is 5 p.m. Do you have a lecture now?
No, sir.
Huh?
No, sir.
But I'm seeing your class rep saying it is 5 p.m. Mr. God's time, let me give you, you can see some people are just joining now. Now you are 96 from just less than this. So class rep, you can talk now. Unmute yourself.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Yeah, why I was saying that is because there are some of us that we are still in school because of that, and we know we have been in school since 7:30 today due to the class which we postponed, and some of us are still going to far places. That's why I was waiting that, okay, after this class, we can be going. So that is it.
So I should end the class?
No, I was just reminding you. I know that I asked you to end the class, sir. I was reminding you. I never knew that you say it. That's why I private chat you, sir.
No, of course, I was telling you the timing, right? And we started very late. So that's why the time is extending. I apologize for that anyways.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, but I think your class is very confrontational.
Sir?
In fact, are you from Niger Delta?
Sir, not really, sir.
But really, something like that. It is well with you guys. We are still in school. Well, for those of you in school, I'm sorry about that. So let's continue quickly. I'll soon finish. As part of this, students are asked to gather and share reminiscences from relatives, use newspaper archives, and collect old photographs related to fishing and fishing community in the area. Students use an iLearn wiki to gather together fishing stories and scan to access newspaper archive and photograph. However, Jack also needs a photo sharing site as he wants pupils to take and comment on each other's photos and to upload scans of old photographs that they may have in their families. He needs to be able to moderate posts with photos before they are shared, because preteen children can't understand copyright and privacy issue. Jack sends an email to primary school teachers group, which is a member of, to see if anyone can recommend an appropriate system. Two teachers replied, and both suggested he uses Kid Takes Pics, a photo sharing site that allows teachers to check and moderate content. As Kid Takes Pics is not integrated with the Island authentication service, he sets up the teacher and a class account with Kids Take Pics. He uses the Island setup service to add Kids Take Pics to the service seen by the students in his class, so that when they log in, they can immediately use the system to upload photos from their phones and class computers. So the improvement on this from the other one is now that he wants to make a system look like Facebook, where students can comment. Before, they just upload and that's where it stops. But now he wants them to be able to comment on the document. So features from Jack: a wiki for group writing, access to SCRAN history archive. This is a shared national resource that provides access to historical newspaper and magazines article for school and university. Features to set up and access an email group. A feature to integrate application with the Island Authentication service. The feature list, is it 505 already? Oh boy, people not try. Okay. Where am I? Okay, so the feature list. The output of the feature identification process should be a list of features that you use for designing and implementing your product. There is a need to go into a lot of details about the feature at this stage. You add details when you're implementing the feature. You can describe features using a standard input action output template by using structured narrative, description, or by a set of users' story. So these are what we have for the Island authentication feature. You have the description, the constraints, and the comments. So feature description using user stories. So description: as a system manager, I want to create and configure an Island environment by adding and removing services to or from that environment so that I can create environments for specific purposes. As a system manager, I want to set up sub-environments that include a subset service that are included in another environment. As a system manager, I want to assign administrators to create environment. As a system manager, I want to limit the right of environment administrators so that they cannot accidentally or deliberately disrupt the operation of key services. As a teacher, I want to be able to add services that are not integrated with the Island authentication system. So these are the description that is needed or that are needed. The constraints: the use of some tools may be limited for license reasons, so there may be a need to access license management tool during configuration. Comments: based on Ellen's and Jack's scenario. So innovation and feature identification. Scenario and user stories should always be your starting point for identifying product features. Scenarios tells you or tell you how user work at the moment. They don't show how they might change their way of working if they have the right software to support them. Stories and scenarios are tools for thinking, and they help you gain an understanding of how your software might be used. You can identify a feature set from stories and scenarios. User research on its own really help you innovate and invent new ways of working. You should always think creatively about alternatives or additional features that helps users to work more efficiently or to do things differently, but not to overclog the software. So these are the conclusion for today's class. Thank you for listening, so that those who are going to a far place can run along. Yeah, so do we have any questions or concerns? Let me unmute all of you. Where are the participants here? Okay, these are the participants. So allow. So if you have any question, unmute yourself, say what you have to say, and let us move on. So I think I should stop the live. Yeah, you can unmute yourself.